You know, the best way that Notre Dame could help the ACC would be by fully joining the conference. But the second best way they could help the ACC is this.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Dono from Locked On Canes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about at least one, maybe two, of the most underrated football teams in the ACC heading into next year. Especially one of these is like right near the top in their projected win total. Nobody's talking about them. Why? We got to talk about, so Kurt Signetti, the Indiana football coach, who I thought came off sounding like a whiny baby, calling out several programs from, in and out of the ACC, but Miami was one of them. He called out for allegedly spending $40 million on their football roster. I guess if you just want to make up numbers, you might as well make up the highest number possible. But Kenton, let's start with this. So this is getting reported all over the place on Tuesday morning. Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, David Hale, who covers the ACC, also had this, that Notre Dame and Clemson have agreed to an annual long-term football scheduling partnership where for 12 straight seasons, starting in 2027, they are going to meet annually for 12 straight years. What I said at the top, like, this is the second best way that Notre Dame can help the ACC because, of course, Clemson is one of the conference's 2 or 3 biggest brands. Notre Dame is a mega brand. So for 12 straight years, KG, you're going to have the Irish against the Tigers every single year. How big is that?
I could not disagree with you more in terms of helping the ACC. This contract was specifically struck so that this was set in place regardless of whether or not Clemson is in the ACC. This deal is completely separate from the ACC. This deal is Clemson's way of saying, hey, listen, I know y'all got the little deal saying as long as we're part of ACC, you're going to play us in Miami and Florida State every so often. We don't want to be part of that rotation. Take us out of the group chat, okay? Take us out of the group chat. You text me individually. Now, Dono, that helps out the ACC in the same way that you getting out of the group chat and saying, text me individually. I don't want to be with those bozos. Helps out that group chat, the people in that group chat still. It doesn't. It doesn't. This is a situation where Clemson is very clearly saying, hey, we're leaving, okay? We're leaving. Time is running up. And when the time is up, we're gone. There is no way we're coming back. There is no way we're still going to be around here. But we want to lock down this series so that we're playing each other at a very high rate, even when we leave. Not if. Yeah. When we leave, we still want to play you. So I don't think that this has anything to do with helping the ACC. If anything, I think it's the exact opposite, where they're saying, ACC be damned. If we want to leave in 3 years, let's just pay out the money, do that. But we still want to see you. We want to leave the house, but not have to give up all the perks of being in the house. One of the perks was playing you. As a matter of fact, let's me and you strike a deal to play each other.
I hate to admit it when you're right and I'm wrong, but that's absolutely what just happened here. Like, it's, I mean, I was so dead wrong and you are so right because, if you read the fine print, yes, this was a deal struck between Clemson and Notre Dame. The ACC had nothing to do with striking this particular deal. They probably learned about it the same time you and I learned about it when it hit the report. Like Jim Phillips logged on, he got like a Bleacher Report notification. Wait, they struck a 12-year scheduling agreement. Now, I do think there's a side benefit from it for the ACC with their TV ratings. Now, that assumes Clemson is still in the ACC in 2027, which may or may not definitely be the case. So I do think there's a benefit for the ACC. But yeah, Clemson struck this deal with Notre Dame separately. Now, it will, for Notre Dame, it will count as one of the 5 games on their ACC scheduling agreement where they have to play, 5 ACC opponents per year. So all the years they play Clemson, that's going to be one of their 5. When the ACC struck that settlement with Florida State and Clemson earlier this year, one of the reported terms of it was, Notre Dame is going to get more frequent matchups with Miami, Florida State, and Clemson. So expect some announcements maybe in the coming months about how frequently Notre Dame is going to play Miami versus Florida State. Now, for Notre Dame, Kenton, there's a clear benefit here for the Irish because
Absolutely.
since they are along with UConn, and they're a little more high profile than UConn, they're one of the 2 FBS schools who is independent from a conference in football. They don't have a conference championship game to help their college football playoff automatic seeding. So, Notre Dame, they understand they need to play the most high-profile schedule possible. And with their ACC scheduling agreement, if, part of their 5 matchups against the ACC are against, UVA, Wake Forest, Boston College, that doesn't help their cause a little bit. So they want to make sure they have as many matchups locked in with Clemson, clearly, with Miami and Florida State as possible to give them high-profile opponents. So there's an obvious benefit for Notre Dame. You outlined the benefit for Clemson. Like, Clemson has an annual opponent locked in, whether they're in the ACC or not in a few years. So I would argue the ACC also benefits from this, but yeah, not nearly as much as Clemson and Notre Dame do.
See, Dono said he hates when I'm wrong, but he threw me the softball because of how Miami took NC State to the woodshed on the diamond this weekend. I know your games, Dono. You can't fool me. You can't trick me. I'm a sharp one. But I will say this. There is a small benefit. There is a small benefit to the ACC in terms of this will be a ratings boost for the time that Clemson is here. There is no argument there. The only part of this why I say even that I struggle to give as an ACC boost, the ACC already had this built into the settlement. It was already built in, maybe not yearly, but you were guaranteed to see them more often than an SMU, more often than an NC State, more often than a UNC, more often than a Duke, a Syracuse, a whoever else, a Louisville. It's to me, again, there is the small benefit of, well, at least now this is going to be a big view getter every single year. Obviously, from Notre Dame's side, you need these types of games to legitimize you. Yes, it is a very different world than we've ever lived in before in terms of having the playoff be 12 teams. It's very different. Expanding to 14 soon, I believe. It's very different than anything that we've seen before. And so a team like Notre Dame is generally going to be either in the tournament or on the bubble in terms of the college football playoff, always, perennially. But a game like Clemson helps you because if you win that game, you are automatically looking at, you just got jumped up there because even Clemson's down year, which was a couple years ago, was what, 9 wins or something like that?
And last year was a down year right up until they won the ACC championship and they got into the CFP.
We all took that Georgia game and made it law and said, oh man, you're a terrible team now, but they came out and proved otherwise. So I look at this and I'm very genuinely saying something very simple here. The reality of what we're looking at, Clemson helped themselves in a major way. Clemson helped themselves in a major way with this deal. Notre Dame helped themselves in a major way with this deal. Again, the ACC got an additional bonus that is very meager out of this, but the reality is this deal more than anything else is saying, hey, it's been real, it's been fun, but it ain't been real fun. Clemson Tigers out.
Yeah, you're 1,000% right. And again, like in 2027, there is like a slight chance that Clemson may no longer even be part of the ACC in 2 years, but would even be more likely in 3 years, 4 years down the road. So a lot of those 12 straight matchups will probably happen with Clemson as a part of a different conference. Miami took a stray this week because Indiana head coach Kurt Signetti he's whining and complaining about sums of money he alleges are being spent by a handful of programs, including Miami, I think Cignetti should direct his whining in a different direction. We'll explain what he said and why next. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Folks, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. Stanley Cup playoffs. We just had this crazy, awesome sports weekend, including the Kentucky Derby and UFC fights. I'm telling you guys, you need to get in on all of the action with FanDuel, because every night the NBA postseason is delivering highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. Folks, live betting is a game changer. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You can bet on individual player stats like three-pointers made, three-point attempts, individual score lines for players. It is so much fun. And, if you had the New York Knicks upsetting Boston in game one, you came away a big winner after that moment. And there's so many more great moments to be had. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. And if that $5 bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Kenton, Gibbs, Grayson Boone on Locked On Wolfpack, and check me out on Locked On Canes. You guys talk any baseball so far this week, Kenton? You talk any, or you kind of skipped over that and you talked about Will Wade?
Oh, we unfortunately had to talk some baseball as we are now out of hosting in terms of our RPI. But, there's always another day to recover and get back in the hosting territory. So who knows?
Oh, man. Well, I had talked a little baseball on Monday, but on Tuesday, something I talked about on Locked On Canes, and I want to get your take on this here on Locked On ACC. So Indiana football coach Kurt Signetti, he's complaining about the amount of money he alleges other programs, not Indiana, but other programs are spending in NIL. And he mentioned Miami as one of these six. He brought up Oregon, Ohio State. They're both notoriously big NIL spenders. Texas Tech. He mentioned the oil money. He also brought up Notre Dame and Miami as programs he claims are spending upwards of $40 million in NIL on their rosters. First thing I'll say, Kenton, is, I have an idea what Miami is spending. I can't give you an actual dollar amount because, again,
Right.
This is not public consumption, but I can confidently tell you Miami is spending nowhere near $40 million in NIL for their football roster. Like, it probably isn't even half that. It may be close to half that, but it's certainly not $40 million. And I tend to gather the same in terms of Notre Dame, Texas Tech, Ohio State, Oregon. Like, Ohio State and Oregon, I think are probably the two top spenders, but I don't think they're spending anywhere near $40 million. So it's funny how Cignetti just gets to really make up numbers and just essentially lie to try to make his point. That's number one. Number two is, Cignetti, if you're so upset about this unfair advantage that these other programs have, last time I checked, like, Indiana University is not some tiny poverty program in the G5. Like, you're talking about a large state university in one of the two most powerful athletic conferences in college sports. Instead of complaining about what other people are spending, why don't you talk to your boosters? Why don't you talk to your NIL collective? Talk to your athletic director? Maybe it's time for Indiana to step it up.
Well, that's the thing. I think that this is his way of doing that. A lot like Saban before he cut out, he was always talking about how Bama wasn't a spender. Bama didn't have the funds to compete with some other schools in terms of NIL and all that good stuff. I think this is his way of doing that. While he does it, though, it just is an embarrassing and weak way to do so. Instead of going directly to them and saying, hey, we need more. We need more. It's instead going about it this way. I'm going to say this. Regardless of whether or not Miami, regardless of whether or not Ohio State, regardless of whether or not Texas Tech, regardless of who's spending $40 million or who's not, whatever the case may be in terms of roster. Okay, and We knew this would be a side effect of NIL. What about
Yeah.
it? What about it? Like you said, Dono, you as a Big Ten school are above all the other schools in your area. I'm pretty sure Ball State is either in Illinois, Ohio, or Indiana. It's in one of those three. Are you going to give your money to Ball State? See? Are you going to say, hey, we have too much advantage over Ball State. We need to even the playing field. And then I'm going to say this. This is one that's not even illegal. I can understand people with the tampering claims. I get that. I get that everybody's saying play within the rules, dude. I can understand that even though nobody knows what tampering is or how it works at this point. I understand that. I can at least see where you're coming from. People spending money when it's legal to spend money? Brother, go to your boosters and tell them, hey, I need more. I need more. These are the numbers. These are the estimates that are being spent. And this stuff like this is exactly why I said, if Ohio State wins the national championship, every current college and high school football player should be dancing in the streets because everybody's going to get paid more. Everybody, for all the mess they talked about Ryan Day, guess what? When you got a $20 million roster, things get a little easier. When you can afford to buy
you said $20 million roster. How did Kurt Signetti had them doubling their budget in 1 year? Apparently, they're now a $40 million. Again, he's just making up fake numbers.
But that's the thing. Nobody knows how much anybody else is spending. Because here's the most interesting thing about NIL, Dono. Here's the most interesting thing I found out. NIL, while it is adjacent to the universities, it's not intertwined with the universities. So even public universities don't have to disclose, hey, these are the deals going out to our players, because again, this is between that young man and whatever business is supporting him. Like Bryce Underwood's deal is between him and Barstool and whoever else gave in to that collective and say, hey, we want to, pay Mr. Underwood to be at the University of Michigan. So there's no clear print for anybody. They could be spending $40 million. They could be spending $80 million. They could be spending $100 million. They could be spending $100,000. We don't know. Everybody's just guessing and reaching. And this is a really weak look by a coach that I'm very fond of because he wins everywhere. He does it the hard-nosed, tough way. I'm coming up on the rough side of the mountain. I'm doing my best. That's the type of guy that I've taken Cignetti to be. This is just weak to me from him because, again, we don't know who's making what.
And you know what? The NIL collectives of those 6 schools that he mentioned should start using his quote as a pitch. Like, hey, Canes Connection Collective, whatever the collective's called from Ohio State, Notre Dame. Like even Kurt Signetti says, you got to come here to get paid.
We spending 40. We spending a 40. Okay. You think Ohio State paid a lot with their 20? I think you need to double it. I think you need to mess around and throw a little lanyard on there, baby. You got to throw some extra. So in all seriousness, again, this is a moment where teams are getting paid and all that, and sure. So I have heard rumblings of an alleged salary cap or something along those lines coming down the pipeline, but even that, how do you enforce that, right? How do you enforce it? Which is again, if I'm these college coaches, if I am these administrators, the best thing you could possibly do, if I'm Cignetti, apparently, because I got a problem with people spending money, the best and most important thing you can possibly do is get all of the players to the table and say, hey, listen, with revenue sharing coming, you all will be richer than you were before. Now, you can allow the 1% of players to keep making millions of dollars. It's really less than 1%. It's about 1% of all college football players that are making millions. But you can allow that 1% of 1% to continue making millions while y'all make pennies. Or we can have some collective bargaining. We can understand that you all are a unified labor force and that you all have things that, demands and whatnot that you want to come to the table with that we will do our best to adhere to. But until that happens, you'll see belly achers like Cignetti saying, oh, they're spending so much money down. How am I ever going to keep up? I'm pulling out hair I don't even have. What's going on? You'll see.
Yeah, and so, there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered about what it's going to look like, assuming the House versus NCAA settlement gets passed, which is not really a guarantee because there's a lot of arguing over the roster spots cap, right? Because basically every walk-on in the country is about to lose their spot, and the judge is not happy about that. But, supposedly part of the House settlement would include that, every school, of course, is going to have their budget of $20.5 million, which is not just for football, but they're going to have their $20.5 million revenue sharing budget. And then players can make third-party NIL deals on top of that. But supposedly those NIL deals will get scrutinized to where, like, there's got to be a legitimate business purpose to it, right? Where it can't just be collective is just going to, raise millions of dollars just to pay you to play. But I still feel like there's a lot of workarounds for that because,
absolutely.
I have a pretty good idea of like what collectives do, or at least how they present themselves. And there are when you're part of an NIL collective, I'm sure some collectives are more strict about enforcing this stuff than others. You do have duties you have to perform in terms of appearances, advertisements you have to do, fan engagement. Like, I mean, maybe there's some collectives out there that are just such a sham. Like they don't even try to make players do that stuff, but most of them do. Like actually, like players do have a job as a part of their collective. So I don't know how much that's actually going to change after the House versus NCAA settlement, but supposedly there's going to be more scrutiny where your NIL money has to be for legitimate business purposes and not like a mafia style no-show job.
But what is that, right? Like, what is that? If you say, oh, I'm paying this person for advertisements, have we not seen plenty of influencers? Remember Fire Festival when they had Kylie Jenner and company tweeting about it? All it was just tweet, just tweet. And I'm sure, regardless of how little a player actually cares about whatever collective or whatever, and they just want to get paid, nobody is dumb enough to sacrifice millions of dollars to not pick up the device that's already in your hand for 50% a day and go, hey, everybody, listen to today's episode of Locked On ACC, Kane's Collective ad. Alex, Dono, and company do it big on Locked On ACC. Send tweet. Like that's it. And then guess what? If a company agrees, if a collective agrees to pay you $5 million to do that, who can step in and say that's not a legitimate business purpose? Because how much would Beyonce charge you to make that same tweet? How much would one of the Jenners or Kardashians charge you to make that same tweet? So how are you not allowed to pay that young man that same amount if you believe, hey, this is his value to my business?
Yeah, no, that's well said. Coming up next, here's why we think the Louisville Cardinals are the most under the radar, disrespected football program in the ACC. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode. Folks, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and so much more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out Brian Smith, who hosts the Portal podcast on the Locked On Network. Brian, who's a very good friend of both Kenton and I, a frequent guest of this show and the other shows that we host. He takes you around the transfer portal, and there are still players unsigned within the portal. So the portal is still churning. It's always open, as Mario Cristobal would say. Make sure you check out the portal, free wherever you get your podcasts and free on YouTube. You know, Kenton, I was thinking about this morning. Like, there is rightfully a lot of hype behind the Clemson Tigers. Like, they earned it. They won the ACC last year. Their team looks even better on paper than it did last year. There's been, a lot of hype about Miami, flashy offseason. They replace Cam Ward with Carson Beck, who everyone's talking about. Miami fell short, but they did win 10 games last year. So you can understand a lot of chatter, but I start thinking about the Louisville Cardinals.
Right.
KG, Louisville preseason has the same over-under on wins on FanDuel as Miami does at 8.5. Don't get talked about nearly as much, despite what Jeff Braum has done there. Like, he had them in the ACC title game a couple of years ago, seemingly at least a year or two ahead of schedule. Every quarterback that guy touches overperforms, his expectations or his talent level. He'll have a chance with Miller Moss this year. They've got one of the better running back situations in the entire country. 8.5 wins over under, tied for second in the conference. Like, how come we don't talk about them? And not just you and me. How come nobody talks about them more?
Because they're not sexy. They're not a team that people look at and they're like, oh man, you've got these huge splashes. You've got all these amazing things all over the place. I'm going to say some things that are going to upset a lot of people right now, including you, Dono, potentially.
Oh, no.
I think that Miller Moss and Carson Beck are much closer than people imagine them to be. Much closer. I don't think there's a huge gap between those two. You look at those two and say, all right, well, if you add one that's marginally better than the other, which me personally, I think if management shows me two pictures, they're the same thing, management. I don't know what you want from me here. But most people would say Carson Beck is somewhat better. I would not say he's a world better than Miller Moss. And then you talk about the other things that you just talked about. The run game, the defense that, I don't know how they keep doing it because Braum is an offensive guy, but that defense is always competent enough. If we did not see a Tyler Shuck disaster class against Stanford last year where he's throwing balls looking down at the ground and whatnot, that team is right there for an ACC championship game appearance. And yet we don't talk about this team as, hey, this is a team that can get it done. I believe so. They have the things that travel, run game and the defense. And I think Miller Moss is all right. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's a world beater, but I think Miller Moss plus Braum, who is a definite floor raiser and ceiling raiser for his quarterbacks, I think that team is poised to have a very good year this year.
You think about the miracle worker that Jeff Braum is. If I told you a month ago that Tyler Shuck would get drafted before Shedeur Sanders, your reaction would have been a lot like your reaction right now. I still don't understand why Tyler Shuck got drafted before Shedeur, but it did happen. It did happen.
Factually, you are correct. It happened. That's a thing that happened. I'll tell you what, though. Is that not an example? Jack Plummer, before he got there, everybody was like, oh, man, he's done. There's nothing. Yeah. And let's talk about Tyler Shuck for a minute. For all the things that people say about, oh, man, Braum, those quarterbacks, they got to throw so much, and they're going to be put in some harm's way. Jack Plummer played 7 seasons in college football. He only finished 1 all the way through. Guess who his head coach was in that one season? Braum. It wasn't at Oregon where, oh, yeah, they're going so fast and they got all these things and you'll be hard to get a shot off on the court. No. It was old Louisville with Braum. So, again, I look at Braum as a definitive quarterback whisperer. I think him plus Miller Moss, again, the combination is more dangerous to me than many other quarterback and head coach combinations in this conference. I think that they're primed to do something this year, but next year even more. I'm like, hey, that's going to be a team because both of those running backs from last year were true freshmen or redshirt freshmen. Yeah. One true freshman, one redshirt freshman. Yeah. They both got to come back again. If you can retain that talent with Miller Moss coming back as well and all that good stuff, that team is going to be one to contend with. But again, even talking about this upcoming season, that is a dangerous team that Vegas knows that's a dangerous team. Yeah. It's just the pundits and whatnot don't. And I'm going to tell you something. If you think that Vegas is wrong and they just pick things just to pick them, there's a reason Dono and I are always reading for FanDuel. There's a reason why if you ever see any sports podcast, they're talking about BetMGM. They're talking about whatever daily fantasy. They're talking about that for a reason. These people have made billions of dollars being correct about these predictions. And I think Louisville being one of the best teams in the conference is an easy correct prediction.
They're very good at what they do. I think the only time they missed was they had Florida State's win total at like 8.5 last year, and they won 2 games. But outside of that, they're very good at what they do.
Yeah, I mean, hey, and nobody goes 100%. And if they did, what would be the point of betting at that point? Now it's just like,
Right.
oh, well, I'm just giving away money. I can go give this to a charity.
If you had the under on Florida State, you comfortably came away with a lot of money last year.
Ate like a king. By week 5, you were like, all right, so y'all gonna pay me out, or what's going on here?
Well, we appreciate everybody for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. Kenton crushed it today. I was a little off my game today and thinking the ACC was going to benefit by this scheduling agreement. Kenton set me straight. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to Locked On ACC, and we'll talk to you again next time on another episode. We are right here on the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.